Thanks for being here. I'm Jim Watkins. John and I are the college kids on the movie, and we've been doing this together for almost 31 years now. So thank you all for being here and being a part of our night. So it's not just about us. We've got a whole pile of full-time brokers and an incredible staff. So I'd like those individuals to stand up, all the brokers and staff, and be recognized. These are the people that really do it.
Most everybody here.
The other group of folks we couldn't do this event without are our 8 sponsors. Some of them have been with us for years, others are new this year. So I'm going to be very careful. I'm going to read these things because I don't want to screw up and miss any of these people. We want their checks next year. So thanks to our sponsors. In no particular order, First National Bank, Bank of Colorado, Alpine Bank, Wells Fargo Home Mortgage, American Ag Credit, the Malone Team, Caliber Home Loans, and Title Durango. Thank you guys so much for helping us put this together. As in the past, we're making a movie of this sometime tonight, early in the morning. It'll be on our website, and that's www.wellsgroupdurango.com. I'll be happy to have you go back through it and look at it. If you want portions of this in print, you're going to need to call our brokers. We've had some copyright infringement things, and we're just going to need to do it that way. Bob has a daughter getting married in the fall, and he needs every nickel he can have. This is the 16th time we've done this. 16th annual. Bob's been with us for all 16 years, and we're very, very pleased to have him. John will talk about him a little bit more as time goes on. The concert hall is an amazing venue. Fort Lewis does crazy things for this town. And so we'd like to thank Leanne, who's driving the lights and the sound back there. She's been a really, really big help to us. There's been a whole bunch of really incredible talent on this stage, and the Wells Group's been honored to be able to sponsor a lot of the acts, shows, music, and that sort of stuff that have been on this stage. So thank you, Fort Lewis, for this incredible venue. John, go ahead. The really good news about talent that we have to come to town is these guys are not involved in that. They are not going to sing their presentations. Their talents are other than singing. So thank you for not singing tonight, you guys. It's an incredible honor of mine. John and I have been partners for 31 years together, and we've known each other a whole long time before that. So it's my honor to introduce not only my partner, but a dear, dear friend, John Wells. So John, take over.
Thank you, Jim. Appreciate it. Thanks for everybody coming out on, I know you'd much rather be outside in that beautiful spring weather that we're having. Bob had to change his slides because of migration, migration, people moving in. And I think we got 32 new Utah residents and 72 new Arizona residents all blew in this afternoon. And some of our brokers are helping relocate those folks right now. Well, appreciate you. We really do appreciate you taking time to be with us. We hope that this has value to you in some fashion. That's the whole intention. Just want to start by wrapping up. We do some predictions each year, and we'll go over this real quickly, but we had some predictions last year, 2015. We'll start with visitation. We really felt that last year was going to be a strong year in regards to tourists and visitors to our area. And that proved true. If you see the lodger's tax, 7.4% increase. We had 5.6 or so percent increase in sales tax in the city. And then Al Harper and John Harper down here had a great year, a 9% increase in ridership at the train. Mesa Verde had about the same increase in skier visits and visits to Mesa Verde. And Purgatory had a great skier visit year as well. So we did see that as an impact. And that translates, not necessarily in the same year, but that translates into a strong real estate market because those visitors get connected to our area. We felt that most in-town housing will have to be higher density to attempt to meet attainable price points. Attainable price points, we'll just say for a moment, That could be $600,000, but to create that $600,000 product even today, developers and builders are having to create more density, smaller pad sites, and concentrate that because of the land costs and development costs today. We did see that happen throughout the year. We saw fewer residential sales in town. The market was very strong, and why was that? Inventory. We just don't have the standing stock of inventory for the buyers that want to buy in town Durango. So you'll see some of that as Bob goes over his slides here in a few minutes. We felt that the interest rates, based on economists and the banks that we work with, our great bankers here in Durango, were going to be increasing a fair amount in the third and fourth quarter. In fact, you probably listened to a lot of our brokers here last year saying, this is the year to buy, you've got to take advantage of this historic low mortgage rates. Well, a lot of factors kept that from happening. We certainly saw some minor increases, but the fact is, with international and national economies and things that are certainly outside of this region, we see those continually very attractive interest rates, which are a benefit to us all in the real estate industry. We felt there would be an increased sale of developed lots. That seems kind of simple, but because we've seen 2 to 3 years of continual reduction of inventory, again, Bob will prove this in his data that he shares with you, the options for housing is new build. So we saw quite a few, a sizable number of lots absorbed in the La Plata County area. Of course, a lot of those were Edgemont Highlands. We have the Three Springs, those two seeing the strongest growth, but also infill lots, be it in Sky Ridge and around the community. In addition, Twin Buttes didn't come to the market to add that inventory last year. That would have, of course, added options for the buyers. We felt that Three Springs would see substantial increases in value. There's a couple reasons for that. The new lot prices have to be higher because the development costs were higher of those lots. Some of the products were larger, and as those prices, of course, were higher because of development cost and building cost, it helped pull up the balance of the value in Three Springs. So it saw a healthy increase in values in the Three Springs area. Agricultural lands, sluggish sales, and I just talked to my mother-in-law earlier today. It's an important thing to do once in a while. And Linda Campbell, she has an opinion once in a while, but the Witts that have operated an irrigation supply company in La Plata County for 52 years closed down today. And that's an indication of the industry. The agriculture, when I came to college here quite a few years ago, it was about 65% of the economy in La Plata County. Now we're less than 6%. So the impact is, it's a lot of work. And with the land values, it's difficult to buy land and be a true agricultural property. That does not mean that people don't buy lifestyle ranches. That's a different topic. Commercial property. The demand has been high from both investors and users. And I'll touch on this in a minute, but we saw that to be true. And the supply is the issue again in commercial property. So each year we try to either roll the dice or throw the dart and estimate how many residential sales will occur in La Plata County. We predicted 1,355 in 2015, and last year there was 1,324. And if only 31 of you would have bought homes last year, we could say that we were exactly correct, but we were 31 homes short, and we feel that was a pretty close estimate. Luck has something to do with that. So let's go to the forecast. This year we're predicting a 5% increase in residential sales. And for some reasons we'll visit about in a moment, we feel that could be higher, but we're predicting 5%. That's a healthy growth. That's really, I think, a very solid growth. We had a good year last year. We've had good 3 years, really, and increases year after year. You can only sustain so much. But we also believe that developed lots will again see strong absorption as existing housing stock continues to dwindle. Bob will shock you with some of his data of where the inventories are today. The developed lots at Edgemont Highlands, and when I say developed lots, that's improved, ready to build. A builder can pull permits, build today, not something that needs to be improved in the sense of roads utilities, et cetera. But we have Edgemont Highlands, we have Spring Creek, which is just up Florida Road, just on the market this year, 24 lots. Three Springs, of course, adding quite a few lots this year, and very possibly Twin Buttes to come on in the later third or fourth quarter. So 200 shovel-ready lots. That's the good news. We've got some inventory there to add housing. The question is, do we have the builders that can build to that capacity? And quite honestly, I don't think we do. They're very busy right now, but it's really a challenge. Water wells. We feel this is going to be a threat this year. If you were to talk to Well on Wheels, for example, and see how their business is, it's booming. And the reason is there's a lot of well issues in the county. And because of that, the county now requires substantial testing if you were to subdivide any rural properties that are going to depend on domestic wells or central well system. That could restrict residential development in the rural parts of our county. That being said, we have these two water districts. And years ago I thought, well, I'm not sure these water districts really make sense or not. Well, they seem to make sense these days. So these water districts, we have the La Plata Archuleta and the La Plata West. La Plata West being water from Night Horse Reservoir that will provide water to parts of the western part of the county, and of course the La Plata Archuleta in the eastern part of the county. These systems are in construction, starting to have been in development, and will be the answer for some rural water needs. Well, infrastructure costs. Infrastructure, for those who don't use that word, I mean, that's basically the underground utilities, the above ground utilities, curb, gutter, sidewalk, street trees, street lights, et cetera. The cost of these materials, even during the recession, just kept going up. Material costs kept going up. The cost of installing them, engineering them, continues to rise. So they are a substantial part of development costs. For those of you in the industry, you already know that, but really substantial. In fact, if you think about it, the only variable in developing real estate, from raw land to be it homes, commercial, condominiums, townhomes, whatever product's created, is the land. The infrastructure costs, the planning costs, the regulatory costs, those are fixed costs. So we expect to see the pressure on the landowner in regards to what can be developed on that property based on the end value. Regulatory requirements. Well, these requirements are positive in many ways, but they also add one more layer of cost, expense, and development time for the people that are going to create more product for the demand that Bob will show you that is needed to to add product to meet the demand Bob's going to talk about. Driveway standards. The county driveway standards, I think it's been 1.5 years, 2 years, but I'm going to share a story. I just had a visit with an engineer in the audience today. We recently sold a pretty expensive property we'll call a recreational luxury property. And the cost for the new driveway, there's a driveway in already. Utilities are in already. But to improve that driveway to the current standards, it's going to be $200,000. Now, if this wasn't a luxury property, that would not occur. Don't you agree? So let's take Forest Lakes. Forest Lakes, I'm going to use an example because there's some steeper terrain in the upper part of Forest Lakes. You have a steeper 1-acre lot in Forest Lakes, the driveway standard today could exceed the price that you pay to purchase the lot. So driveway standards are going to become an issue in regards to developing existing subdivided lots that do not have a building permit yet. Impact fees. There's many impact fees, road impact fees, school fees, et cetera. But the fair share fee, which has been in the newspaper lately, if it's being proposed, a potential change or increase. But right now it's over $9,000 per unit. That's just one more layer of expense. And quite honestly, the consumer pays that. Now what that money goes to, of course, is to assist primarily today, not build any product, but to assist with loan assistance for people that meet the criteria to go to Regional Housing Alliance and secure an assistance, which is a great program. But quite honestly, the balance of the product is absorbing this cost, and that $9,000 is a substantial part. If you take the median price home, it's adding cost to that consumer. So we'll talk about the gorilla in the room, oil and gas industry. The impacts in La Plata County certainly are less than San Juan County, New Mexico. But San Juan County, New Mexico, we were told recently by Christy Zeller that there were 6,500 jobs, I think that's the right number, lost last year. And that's about a 10% reduction of the employed forces in San Juan County. So we aren't being impacted to that degree, but there's impacts here that we're seeing. So the impact will have some relationship to home sales. Unfortunately, some people may have to sell their home if they're employed in the oil and gas industry and now are unemployed, if they aren't able to find work in a fairly soon manner. But at the same time, we will see probably continued pressure on this industry and probably reduction still in that workforce. And it's not just a direct oil and gas, it's the service industries as well, road building, pad construction, et cetera. And then the mineral oil royalty income. The royalty income at the current gas prices, as the majority of mineral owners in La Plata County are getting gas royalties, we don't have that much oil development, that reduction of income has a ripple effect to the rest of the economy. They have less money for spending, they have less money to develop homes or buy additional homes, so we feel there's an impact there. And of course, La Plata County, everybody in this room may be impacted by that because if the oil and gas industry is not paying the substantial share they've paid to the La Plata County tax base, then everybody in this room will start to pay a higher annual real estate ad valorem tax. Oop, I skip over that one because I don't want to talk about it. That's the Gold King mine spill. I took it off a couple times and they kept adding it back, but Bob will tie in what happened last year with that, and we're looking towards 2016. So he's going to talk about what happened in 2015, of course, with the spill occurring in August. The question, of course, and I was glad to see in the newspaper that the recent testing of fish does not indicate immediate concerns, but of course, no one really knows what the long-term effects of this spill is going to be. Of course, it's now a Superfund site, so that means we get to look towards the government to help us out. Federal government, we don't know what that means. But in a sense, certainly we know the community's really focused on being supportive of making sure that there's no residual impacts to the fisheries, to the recreation on the river, and to the health and safety of our community. But it is still a possible concern for 2016 and beyond. Rental rates. Bob was going to touch on vacancies, which there aren't any. And because of the low vacancy factor, with everything else considered, we believe we'll continue to see rental rates increase substantially in 2016. So will some of these renters become buyers? I mean, certainly in our business, we believe that as a renter is paying a certain price point and they realize that's the same amount as if they had a mortgage, and if they have some down payment, certainly they can convert from renting to owning. But the other unfortunate part of increased rental rates is how many people will leave the area, i.e. La Plata County. Are they going to rent in Aztec or Farmington? Are they going to rent in Mancos or Cortez and commute to their work? So there's certainly some pressures there that could occur with the increased rental rates. The little side note here is just, I think, good information to share with you. And Bob will touch on the details that back this up. But $10 million a year, that's how much Fort Lewis College students pay in rent. That's a substantial amount of income that comes to the landlords that have rental homes in La Plata County and in Durango. Because you know those 14 kids in the house that you're renting? Multiply that times 400, no. It's quite a bit of income, though. It's also good for the construction industry to redo that house each year after that. Affordable and attainable housing. What are the answers? So it's very important. I think the entire community supports workforce housing. It's crucial, really, to have workforce housing to support employees at all income levels in our community. That being said, we're going to have to see some creativity, and we're starting to see some of that. Tiny homes. Sometimes builders call that shotgun homes. So some of you may think you live in a tiny home, but tiny homes by definition are probably less than 600 square feet, some very small. And there's been actual individuals approach brokers in our office looking for locations to develop tiny homes. Tiny home doesn't need a very large lot, so that equals probably a tiny lot. But when you combine that, it's a situation where somebody can feel that they are going to be plenty comfortable in 400 square feet, and the benefit of that is they have a lot less of a footprint, carbon footprint, and a financial footprint. Mobile home parks. We haven't seen development of mobile home parks in quite some time. But a mobile home park done attractively certainly is an attractive option. And the reason I say this, if you add the space rent plus the payment on a new mobile home, that's really potentially between $900 and $1,100 a month. For a family of four, that's pretty affordable with the rental rates and the rest of the stick-built inventory going up and up. As you may recall, just in the last 6 months, we had the mobile home park on County Road 203, Animas View Drive, sell for over $7 million. Island Cove Trailer Park sold for over $6 million. Clearly, mobile home parks seem to be a good investment for some. The higher density apartments, condominiums, and townhomes. You may have noticed that the City of Durango approved, I think was it last night, the Rocket Drive-In site from going from 18 units to 24 units per acre. And so that's slated for just under 200 apartments as it progresses through the development phases. And that is certainly the answer that we're seeing. RHA, Karen at RHA says we need lots of apartments. We need a lot of rental housing at an attractive price point. So they are looking towards satisfying part of that need at the Rocket Drive-In, for example. And certainly, I've already touched on the higher density of townhomes and condominiums versus single family. That's a way to, of course, average down the maximum price of a home. So just a few last things. The modest growth, about 5% in 2016. We do believe we'll see, I just haven't touched on this yet, an increase in sale of luxury property. So let me just say the reason that is on here as a prediction is that last year saw a 30 to 40% decrease in luxury homes, which is identified as the top 10% of value of residential property in our market, which happens to be just about $950,000 and above. So we do believe, in fact, I just looked it up this afternoon, there's been $6 million homes sell in LaPlata County in the first 2.5 months of this year, which is not necessarily the busiest time. So we see that as a positive. And we do feel that there will be, unfortunately, continued reduction of oil and gas employment. We've seen a fair amount of it. We hope we don't see a lot more, but we will see some more. And a continued strong demand for commercial properties. This comes from a couple different directions. One, owner-user. That's a business growing that needs more space. And I see some people in this audience that we continue to look for those properties that will fit their needs today. And it's hard to find them. So certainly there's the demand there for the owner-user who's expanding their business, maybe creating another location that needs that space. And then the investment side. Certainly the real estate investors, we see more real estate investors. You look at the stock market, maybe you shouldn't look at that very often. Look at the bond market is so competitive that the rates are pushed down, so there's not a very high rate of return on bonds. And of course, if you put your money in a savings account, it's earning, 1 or 2%. So we're seeing more and more demand for commercial investment property in the Durango area. A lot of reasons for that. Vacancy rates are low, rental rates are fairly high and attractive, and default rates are fairly low as well. So that is our predictions. Thanks for that. And let me introduce to you, what you already have, Bob Allen. Bob Allen's been here for almost 30 years. And without Bob, we couldn't do this, of course, but Bob is a wealth of information. In fact, it's rare that somebody doesn't consider calling Bob, probably on a daily basis, many of you in this audience, to get that little tidbit of information that happens to be on the top of his mind. And so we really appreciate his expertise and professionalism. Welcome, Bob Allen.
Am I on? All right. First thing I want to do is thank Jim, John, for putting this on. 16 years. How about a big hand for these guys?
Their staff, J.R. Spies, who's been great, their sales manager. And then I want to point out, there's a guy behind this screen, Nathan Morris with Web Services, who is our tech guy, and he's been very helpful. The Wells Group had a whole team of, I don't know what it was, 7 or 8 brokers that worked with us to put this together. There's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes, and a big hand for all of them. That's a tough job. So what did we see in 2015? The local real estate market was still strong. One of the strongest parts of our economy, everything was going great. Supply and inventory, you've heard me say this for several years now, the inventory was still pretty short, still pretty low. Still a shortage of existing homes for sale and underproduction of new residential units. By underproduction, I mean there's not enough construction of new residential units that we've seen in the county to make up for the demand that we have from population growth. New construction has risen, and it did go up in 2015 compared to 2014. It actually went up quite a bit across the board. Total sale transactions were up in 2015 compared to 2014, but they're still depressed, quite a bit below where we were at the peak about 2005, 2006. Mortgage credit conditions are still great. We can get money. Plenty of money is available for mortgages here in La Plata County. No reason to go out of town for mortgages. We did think that TRID, which is the new disclosures laws that were implemented by the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau, thought maybe that was going to have an impact. It may have for a short time, but that was short-lived and really didn't have as big an impact as we thought it might. The Gold King, no doubt about it. It had an impact, and we'll show you why here a little bit later on. And I think it's really the biggest reason why we saw some big impact on sale activity in October and November. But you'll see we recovered a bit since then. Other issues that were going on that may have had some impact, low housing supply, we know about that, but that's been there for a while. The stock market was taking a dive there in August, so it may have had some impacts. The energy industry, we know about that. That's been in decline all year. Rural economy and geopolitical events, if you remember back in August and September, there was a lot of worry about what was going on in China and how that was going to impact the worldwide economy. Demographics. So, population growth, household growth, and the labor market. The basics of what you need for a housing market. Those need to continue to grow, and if they do, if the labor market's strong, and you continue to have population growth and household growth, you have demand for housing. Population growth in the county has gone up about 1.5% per year between 2000 and 2014. So the last 15 years, our population growth continues to grow. That's a pretty healthy rate. 1.4% is pretty good. That's pretty good population growth. City of Durango is a little less at 1.2%. Still, that's strong, that's okay. We've been growing and continue to grow, and that's been pretty steady for the last 14, 15 years. Household growth, here's the kicker. Household growth is stronger than housing unit growth. So people creating households, people moving out of mom and dad's house and creating another household, right? They move into a new house, they need another housing unit. Well, that household growth has been stronger than permit growth. So if you look at the housing unit growth between 2000 and 2005, it was pretty strong, 2.5%. But then it dropped. And it dropped during the Great Recession down to about 1.3%. Conversely, the household growth is about 1.6, 1.7% between 2000 and 2005. So in that period, it was less than the housing unit growth. We may have been overbuilding a little bit, but now, in the last 10 years, this household growth has been running at 2%, stronger than 1.3% that we've seen in the last 9 or 10 years. That's key. That's why that demand is stronger than supply. The labor force is another issue. This red line here is the labor force, and it's been running pretty steady at about 30,000 since 2010 for the last 5 or 6 years. This is the number of people employed. The number of people employed in this black line continues to rise. Our unemployment rate's been going down. So essentially what's happening is we're running out of unemployed people, okay? We don't have any more people to employ. That's a little bit of a problem. The unemployment rate in La Plata County has gone down from up here to here. We see a peak around 8% back in 2010. It's dropped down to about 3% here early 2016. That's real low, and it's a whole lot better than the rest of the country. The Wells Fargo has a little get-together every year, early January, and they talk about the economy, and talk about the economy in the state. They talk about the economy in La Plata County, regional economy, and talk about the national economy. And one of the things they talked about was our labor shortage. Professor Tino Sonora was talking about how we have a labor shortage, we have low oil and natural gas prices, and the slow growth of income are factors working against the regional economy. We're also having inflows of non-working populations. So a lot of the folks that are moving here aren't working, so they're not joining the local labor force. That's why that line, that labor force line, is sort of flat line, and the number of unemployed people is diminishing. Let's talk about some of the basics here and what happens in La Plata County, the tourism numbers, the recreation and the awards we get, the record retail sales, air traffic, mortgage interest rate, energy industry, and of course, Gold King. Tourist attractions last year did great. They were all up combined about 6.3%. And the ski area was up, the ski area here in red was up, the train was up very nicely, and Mesa Verde was up. So that total was up, I don't know what that number was, maybe 6%. And I bet that they'll continue to come. I bet that low fuel prices mean that the tourists continue to come. Really, as Mr. Harper knows, the only time they didn't come was back in 2002 when the fire occurred. That was a real hindrance to people coming. The tourists didn't come that year. But if you look back since 1985, and quite frankly, you go back into the 70s, the tourists come. They do, and they will continue, I bet, this summer. Hotel occupancy has risen. That's a factor. That's an indicator of what's gone on in the tourism business, the business of renting rooms in the hotel business. Bottomed out down in 2009, back at about 55%. Went up to 70% here in 2015. That's strong growth, so what do we see? We see 2 or 3 new hotels coming into the market, a couple new ones getting built. We get awards. National Geographic comes out and says, well, where do you want to go backpack? And they said, the definitive mountain town of Durango is the perfect place to start. That's great advertising for Durango. You get to see that National Geographic, it's worldwide. Historic Durango and Silverton Narrow Gauge Railroad has been chugging into the hills from downtown since the late 19th century. That's great advertising. Mesa Verde National Park is great advertising. We get awards. You can't even see all the awards. You go to that Chamber of Commerce website, there's so many awards, it's unbelievable. I saw a new one today. Scenic, Sunset Travel puts us in the top 3 of adventure travel locations in the United States. We continue to get awards. That continues to get us good press, continues to mean that people are going to come. Results in lodgers tax and retail sales tax growth. The retail sales tax collections and the lodgers tax collections are at record levels in 2015. Here, the retail sales tax went up almost 6% in the city. The lodgers tax went up 7.5% in the city. That's pretty good. That's strong, healthy growth. This is kind of an important slide to pay attention to. What this talks about is the out-of-area retail spending. It's very important. And that's the wrong source, but we won't talk about that. It comes from a Buxton study that the city of Durango and the Tierra Group and the Southern Ute Tribe, Business Improvement District, all paid for. The Buxton people, these consultants, have an exclusive contract with Visa. So they can get Visa point of sale information by zip code. So they know that 50%, they can tell us that 50% of our spending, retail spending, that occurs in La Plata County comes from within La Plata County. But 50% of that spending comes from outside La Plata County. So that has an impact. So let's look at those folks that are coming from outside La Plata County. Well, Denver, Aurora, Broomfield, we know Denver's still booming along. I keep thinking maybe it's going to get impacted by the oil and gas industry, but it's still doing pretty well. These guys aren't. These guys aren't. Albuquerque and Farmington, as we know, they're not doing so well. So that may impact our retail business here locally. Phoenix, Dallas, last I looked, Dallas was doing okay. Despite the hit in the oil and gas industry, their labor market was growing right along with the rest of the country. Houston, these guys, we expect them to hurt a little bit because of the oil and gas industry hit that's going to take place right here, happening right now. But I don't expect that same hit to happen in Texas and Austin. So I'm not sure how much, but it's going to impact us. And we know for sure Farmington and Albuquerque, we know they're having some problems. If you look at the percent of retail spending by area, 7.5% comes from New Mexico. We know New Mexico's having a little shaky time right now, so that could have some impact on retail spending in La Plata County going forward. We know that Texas is about 6% of that spending. Okay, that's the spending that's coming from outside La Plata County. So that might be a little shaky too. The airport's still chugging along, still doing great. Been stabilized here, just under 200,000 passengers for the last several years. We're going to add a new nonstop to Los Angeles starting June 2nd, 2016. That's a great thing. Is it time for a new terminal? I happen to think it is.
To have a healthy local economy, you need a few different things, but one of those is access. So basically, how do we, as residents, get out to the rest of the world, and how does the rest of the world come to us? Well, out here in Durango, we have no interstate, we have no ports, no rail. The only way people really get here and we get to the rest of the world is through the internet and is through air service. So the airport in Durango serves not only for us as being vital to our economy and vital to the way we live, but to this entire region. Cortez, Pagosa, Farmington, even southeast Utah and northeast Arizona. Actually, according to a recent study, Los Angeles is is probably our fourth largest destination for passengers. So that should be really successful. We tend to get a lot of traffic in the summer from the California area. I'm really glad, and one of the things that I like to remind people when they say, well, it's only once a week, is Americans started out with their Dallas flight seasonally and a few days a week, and they liked it so much that we're up to 3 flights a day now year-round. So if Los Angeles proves as successful as we think it's going to be, then we should be looking at year-round service within the next few years to Los Angeles as well. So in 2016, one of the things that the Alliance has as a goal is to see every house in La Plata County covered with high-speed internet. We have one of the highest shares of home-based workers of any county in the nation. Colorado is the leading state for home-based workers, so they're a critical part of our economy, and they like to live wherever they want to live. We all want better internet service at our houses as well. So we have this goal, and one of the things that we did was partner with Region 9 in a local bank to help a wireless internet company deliver 20 megabit per second service to everything basically from 160 south to the New Mexico border. 160 from the Animas River south and east to the New Mexico border. So even Navajo Lake is going to start having internet coverage soon. They're already expanding at this point, heading toward the airport. There will be additional service coming online soon in Ignacio, and in the spring they'll be looking east out toward Arbalise and Allison, and then working their way back over the coming years. So that's going to be a big improvement for internet service for southern La Plata County.
Thank you, Roger. 30-year mortgage interest rates, as most folks know, remain near all-time lows. That's strong. That's a good indicator of the strength in the housing market. There's still money available at reasonably low, very low mortgage interest rates. These guys are having a little tough time. Oil and gas tax accounts for about 44% of the total La Plata County real estate tax revenue in 2016. That's up from 41% in 2015, but that's down from a peak of 66% in 2007. Assessor says he anticipates a drop to 30% in 2017. If you look at the oil and gas well activity, the well starts have been pretty low for the last 4 or 5 years. The permits are a little higher, but as I understand the situation, they make sure they permit a well so that they maintain the lease. Here's the big one, price. This is the price per MCF for the San Juan Basin. And this is what they got, the index price that they got in 2014 is in the green, 2015 in the purple, 2016 in the blue. And you can see these last 3 months have been pretty darn low. In fact, that March 2016 number of $1.52 is about 70% below what it was in March of 2014. So in other words, those 6,000 county residents that receive royalty payments from the mineral interests in La Plata County, their paycheck for those mineral interests is down 70%. I get this information from Mike Finney, who's in this room right up here, and I get this information from Christy Zeller, who's over here somewhere. I just saw her. And thanks to them for helping me out with this.
Here in La Plata County, we produce the most natural gas in the state of Colorado with the least amount of wells. We are #1, but production is declining slightly, and certainly the price of natural gas has declined significantly. There are over 3,300 active wells in La Plata County and over 53,000 active wells in the entire state. What does this mean for residents and business owners? For fiscal year 2007, the natural gas industry paid 66% of all property taxes, which means commercial and residential tax payments were very low. For fiscal year 2016, the natural gas industry will pay almost 45% of all property taxes. Next year, this will be even more substantial since the industry will pay around 30% of all property taxes. The outlook for 2016 is a small decline in production and price. However, there is some drilling occurring in La Plata County that may stabilize production.
And then there's Gold King. And that's pretty scary, of course, but I happen to believe that Gold King did have an impact on the October and November sales, and we'll talk about that a little bit when I get there. I think there's no question about it.
The Gold King spill was an ugly reminder of the problem that we have up in the upper reaches of our watershed, but thankfully this community has come together and is working to resolve this issue once and for all. Fortunately, the Gold King spill has forced our community to work with Silverton and have sometimes uncomfortable conversations around water quality, but conversations that needed to occur nonetheless. We're moving in the right direction with our water quality, and thankfully the river recreation community and the broader Durango-Silverton residents are working towards resolution of our problems right now.
The market has been supply constrained for several years. We haven't been building enough units. Improved residential housing units available for sale and for rent are still at historic lows. The inventory compression may be our friend, and what do I mean by that? The fact that we have inventory compression, far less inventory, may help us through this rough patch that we're going to go through because of the weakness in the energy industry. There still remains a very low inventory out there, so that means that the supply still is very low. If demand weakens a little bit because of that energy sector issue, it may not have as big an impact as it could have otherwise. This is the total active MLS listings. This is all properties. This is everything. Commercial, vacant land, single-family residential, everything's in there. I did not expect to see this continued decline through this year. Quite frankly, last year, if you came to this same presentation, I expected this supply number to start to turn last year. It didn't. It kept going down through January of 2016, so our supply continues to fall. When I looked at this number here back in January when I was putting this together, I was shocked at what I saw. Back in January 2015, a year ago, we had about a 4.3 month supply of single-family residential homes in the city of Durango. We had about a 5.5 month supply of condos. Well, I looked at it in December, roughly a year later. Look at that, 2.8 months, almost 3 months of supply. Almost cut in half. Look at the condos, it went down to 3 months. So our supply went down even further, and it was already low here back in 2015. This was even a bigger shocker to me. I looked at the total single-family residential homes listed for sale in town, just looked at the total number. Didn't look at month supply, just looked at total number. You go back to January 2011, there were about 100. And you notice there's a cyclical nature to this. It goes up and down, and that happens constantly. That's the nature of our market. But there were 100 homes for sale back in January 2011. Here, there's 52. It's half. That's a big fall. That's a big drop. If you look at this, I said, well, how much is it falling? Well, it's been falling every month since May of 2015. Supply in town, single-family residential homes and condos, has been going down for the last year. It continues to fall. It's not going up. I think the council recognizes that. I know the city planners recognize that, and they'd like to address that. And one council member said the housing shortage has become an emergency, and we need to do something here in early 2016 to try to take care of it. This source was Durango Herald, December 9th, 2015.
In order to meet projected demand for housing units in La Plata County in the next 30 years, I expect the city and the county to accommodate that growth. The city is presently working on a housing plan that we hope to spur housing development in the city of Durango to meet that demand, both for market rate units and affordable and attainable workforce housing units. And it's my expectation that based upon that demand and based upon the regulations and changes that we're looking at as part of the housing program, that we will actually be able to, if not meet the projected demand, at least come close. And it's extremely important that we do so because if we don't, we'll continue to see the gap between area median incomes and the housing that can afford and what home prices in Durango and La Plata County in general look like continue to widen.
Philip's a planner for the city of Durango. He leads up the Housing Policy Advisory Committee for the city of Durango that's trying to help the city figure out what to do next. I get this information from Rick Lorenz here with the Wells Group, and Rick breaks his sales out by $200,000 price brackets. So the first thing that jumps out at you here is this $200,000 to $400,000 price bracket is where the real power in the market is. That's where most of the sales occur. The blue line is the number sold in 2014. The red line is the number sold in 2015. So that number was up a little bit, right around 500. Between 400 and 600,000, that number was up a little bit. We don't see a drop until we get out here north of $1 million. But if we look at the number of homes listed for sale by that same price range, what do you see? Remember, we saw sales that were up around 500 here in this price bracket between $200,000 and $400,000. Well, the number listed right now, or December of 2015, was below 150. That's got to go up a lot to meet demand. Now it goes up seasonally, and that happens, but it's got to almost triple to meet demand. The days on market has been pretty low, so houses aren't staying on the market. Houses come up for sale, and they've been selling pretty quickly. And that's been happening for at least the last 3 or 4 years. In general, 180 days is a 6-month. That's considered a market imbalance. So anything below that says it's undersupplied and the demand is strong. And we've been running that way for quite a while now. This is 126 days for Durango condos and townhomes. This residential acreage is 141. And the residential single family in town is 106. And quite frankly, that's where the strongest demand is. We'd like to talk about what's going on above $1 million. What is happening in the sale transaction activity? Well, in the last year it fell. All those sales fell from just over 60 down to about 45 or 50. The single family residential, the number of those sales fell about 30% in the past year. Sort of this vacant land sales fell from, I don't know what that is, that's about 15 down, below 10, down to 6, 7. So our sales above $1 million have come down. The vacant land distribution, the price distribution, 80%, 90% of land sales happen below $350,000, right? So the real strength in that market is somewhere here in this $50,000 to $100,000 price point. But what you see here, 2015 in blue, in the light blue, is the number of sales we had in 2015. The MLS supply was here in red as of the end of January. So there's still a little bit more supply out there on the land side compared to the residential side, to the approved residential side. Still seem to be some lots out there, especially in those price points. Land sale transaction activity, lots under 1 acre. But what I'd like to point out to you here in this blue color is they've been pretty stable for the last 3 years. Quite a bit above what they were during the Great Recession. Pretty stable though. They haven't gone up, haven't shot up a lot. This 35 acres or more has gone up. And that's a good sign because we had a lot of 35 acre tracts for sale. So the fact that demand for 35 acre tracts has gone up a little bit is a good sign for those, and we'll chew up some of that inventory. And land and farm and ranch, those sales went up a little bit. That's another good sign because we've had quite a bit of that out there for sale for a long time, and it's good to chew up some of that inventory. Land, again, just like the residential side, land's not sitting on the market very long. If it's land here under 1 acre, if it's a good product, it's selling pretty quick, 200 days, 250 days here recently. Those are good numbers. They're not bad compared to where we were back here during the Great Recession. Demand side, increase in transactions is still constrained because we don't have enough supply. I maintain that our sales numbers would be higher if we had supply below $450,000. I maintain that our population would be stronger if we had supply below $450,000. I like to show what happens on a seasonal basis. This is the monthly number of sales that happen in La Plata County. It's a very seasonal market. It's been like this back since I started keeping track in 1986. And it continues to be like that. So these peaks are in the summer, June, July, August, September, and then these valleys are right now, January, February, March. So what did I tell you? We're going to talk a little bit about Gold King. Look at the sales in October and November. They were down. October was down about 20 or 22%. Perhaps some of you saw Don Reisdorf wrote some articles in the Durango Herald about the impact of the Gold King spill on the local real estate market. I happen to agree with him. I think it had a big impact. I think it is really it's the only reason we can point at that significant decline right there in October. It's too coincidental. I did a little homework and I said, well, what's the average closing time between the time that a property goes under contract and the time that property closes? It happens to be about 56 and a half, 57 days precisely. Well, October 1st is 56 or 57 days precisely since August 5th or 6th, whenever that happened. It is exactly that time frame. So it's too coincidental. That's what happened. That had an impact on our market. If you look, though, what happened in December here, transactions started to recover, came right back and did okay. Same thing we see here in January and February. January and February are always the slowest months of the year. We'll see what happens going forward. Still a little early to tell, but February was up a little bit, a couple percent. On an annual basis, transaction volume was up 6% from 2014 to 2016. That's good. Dollar volume was up even stronger, 8% from 2014 to 2015. That's healthy. What kind of sales are seeing the strongest increase? Well, if you look at this, single-family residential sale in the entire county, this is everything, City Durango, Bayfield, Ignacio, and rural county, it's been kind of stable for the last 3 years. The condos and townhomes, it's been kind of stable. Vacant land, it's been kind of stable. Commercial's actually been up a little bit. But what happened last year? That commercial number went down. It's not a big number. It's a small part of the market. It's 2 or 3% of the total market. It's not very big. Condos went up a lot last year. Townhomes went down a little bit. Single-family residential went up. Vacant land went down a little bit. This number looks like it's a big loss, but it's just not a big deal because it's not a big part of the market. Median house price in town went up quite a bit. Median sale price went up from, I don't know, about $380,000, $390,000 up to about $435,000 last year. That's a pretty big increase. Lack of supply, strong demand, produced price increase. Lack of supply also results in a stable number of homes sold. We're not adding a lot of new supply, so that number of homes sold staying pretty stable. If we had more homes, I bet you we'd sell more of them. Condos in town, they went up a little bit in price from, I don't know, 180,000 up to 190,000. Transaction activity went up quite a bit in town from 2014 to 2015. Townhomes, sort of the same story. Price went up in 2014 to 2015. That price of townhomes has been going up ever since 2012. So the total number of residential unit sales, single-family condos and townhomes, has been kind of flat for the last 3 years, not adding enough supply to meet what I think would be the demand. If that supply was there, those numbers would go up. Strongest demand is in town. They can't find the housing in town that they want. Where do they have to go? They got to go somewhere else. They're going to go to the county. They're going to go to Bayfield, Forest Lakes. Somebody asked me this morning. Somebody said to me, Bob, you got to explain the Zillow algorithm. And I said, what's an algorithm? I don't know. Does anyone know what the Zillow algorithm is? I don't. In the rural county, single-family median sale price is pretty stable. It's been around $360,000 for the last 2 years. Homes sold, very similar to the city. We're not adding enough supply, so it's been pretty stable. Out in Bayfield, out in Bayfield, Forest Lakes, we see a little different story. They're adding some supply, so their total sales are going up. Here, town of Bayfield's in this blue, and it's been steadily rising since 2008, 2009, 2010, and then same in Forest Lakes. It's been going up a little, pretty steadily. Forest Lakes did experience the greatest number of bank foreclosures back during the Great Recession back in here. So it makes sense that those sales would go up in Forest Lakes. In fact, the median home sale price in Forest Lakes went up almost 13% last year. So it's recovering from that foreclosure period. Bayfield's median home price also went up about almost 4% in 2015. So as you would expect, the sale dollar volume in those markets also rose. So those Bayfield and Forest Lakes got a pretty healthy market right at the moment. What's going on in the resort real estate market? North Animas Valley, Purgatory, DMR, they're a little different, I guess. Glacier Club and Tamaron. The Purgatory area real estate activity, what I look at is just the parcel number 5089. So I don't look at the subdivision of Purgatory itself. I look at the parcel number, assessor's parcel number, which comes down south, for those of you who are familiar with it, to about Needle Store, but anything at Needle Store or south is not in this calculation. It's not in these numbers. So their vacant land sales up there at Purgatory went down a little bit. Condos and townhome transactions went up a little bit. Their single-family residential sales were flat, and their total activity is pretty flat for the last year. The total volume went up quite a bit, but in this number here, the sale of Purgatory of the, and I'm probably not saying this correctly, but the sale of the business, the ski area itself, included some real estate. And that real estate was classified as commercial real estate, and that volume, that dollar volume, is in this number, which is why you see such a big increase here in 2015. Otherwise, the vacant land sale volume is pretty flat. Condo and townhome volume's up a little bit, and the single-family residential volume is pretty flat in Purgatory. Tamaron's seen a decline in activity for the last 3 years. Their total activity, again, I just look at a parcel number which includes Tamaron. It includes some areas outside of Tamaron, but it's not that much, and it's not going to have that big an impact on the actual numbers. So their total transactions are coming down a little bit for the last 3 years. Their condominium sales have been pretty flat. Their single-family residential homes are down. Their townhomes are down, and their vacant land sales are down. I suspect that's because of inventory and a lack of inventory at the Glacier Club. Same thing in the dollar volume, as you might expect, with that transaction volume coming down, the sale dollar volumes coming down. And again, I believe that's probably because of a lack of inventory up there. Housing affordability, mortgage market credit conditions. Mortgage market interest rates are still really low. 4% is really low. And that means that someone can afford a house far more than they could back in 2000 or 2005 when the interest rates continued to fall. Mortgage credit is available locally. No need to go out of town. These guys have plenty of money to lend right here in Durango. They can help you. Credit conditions were consistent. There was ample availability. The impact from that TRID from, I don't know what that acronym stands for. All I can tell you is it was going to bring in a greater degree of disclosure from the lenders because of Consumer Finance Bureau laws. Dodd-Frank is basically what that results from. Of course we can afford it. A $500,000 house with a 30-year mortgage only costs 6 cents a minute. So I calculate a housing affordability index for the county and for the city of Durango. The first way I do that is I base my numbers on the median household income, a 20% down payment, mortgage interest rate, the prevailing mortgage interest rate, and 30% of that median household income goes to the mortgage. So that means that that person can afford X price. Well, our price in town has gone above that a little bit. Okay, so the person making the median family income in Durango, under those mortgage conditions that I just described, Durango's a little bit more expensive than it was last year. Out in the county, not so much. Out in the county, still affordable. A lot of folks say to me, but Bob, no one comes up with 20% down. They only come up with 3%. Okay, well, if you can only come up with 3%, that affordability index drops, and La Plata County and the city of Durango become far less affordable, and that number goes down a lot. So there's differences in the way I look at it, but the standard is to look at it the first graph, that's the standard on a nationwide basis. And if you look at the graph on a nationwide basis, it's pretty much the same curve. Affordability on a nationwide basis has started to come back down from those peaks that we saw 2012 at the end of the Great Recession. Talked about plenty of money locally, plenty of money available locally, you can borrow locally, go to your local lender and you can find money. And these guys are lending money and they've been doing it for a while here. It's getting a little tougher to borrow money though. Won't kid you. This guy says after the big mortgage mess, we're being hit a bit more careful these days. These are tax records, financial disclosure statements, plus letters of recommendation from the Chairman of the Federal Reserve, President of the United States, Oprah, and the Pope. You need a little bit more documentation than you did during the subprime market where you didn't need any documentation. Mortgage credit availability is fine nationwide. It's still there. They're making loans. Locally, in 2015, 22% of the residential home purchases were cash. On an average for the last 10 years, it's been almost 25%. So almost a quarter of the home purchases in La Plata County are made with cash. I think that's a little higher than the national average. Our feeder markets. I get the address for the buyer, grantee, from the transfer deed. So the warranty deed sometimes says, Bob Allen came from Dallas, Texas. And I can see that that's where that person came from. I put that into my database. So I know where some of them come from. Not all of the warranty deeds have an address for the buyer. But of those that do, about 6% of them are coming from Texas. And that's down from north of 8% in 2014. It's up from what it was in 1995, but it's down. It's down, it's a smaller percentage of more sales. I'll tell you that the number of buyers from Texas fell about 20, 22% in 2015. So that's significant. Arizona, the percentage went up. So they're a higher percentage of a greater number of sales. New Mexico stayed pretty stable. I expect that maybe that New Mexico number will fall here in 2016. California also remained very stable. California was very high back in 1995. Anybody remember why? It's because of the Loma Prieta earthquake and the Oakland fires. That caused a big migration out of California at the time, and a lot of them came here. What's going on at our neighbors next door? Well, Archuleta County here in the red had a great big year here in 2015. A lot of sale activity. Archuleta County did pretty well. And so did the other two. Montezuma County went up, and so did San Miguel. San Miguel's where Telluride is. Construction activity, it's gone up. Everything's gone up. Residential construction activity is up. Commercial construction activity is up. And you would expect that. With supply low, the market's going to respond. They're going to try at least to bring product to the market to sell if they can. This construction defect law has really kept new development of condominiums and multifamily, primary multifamily product. It's really kept it in check. Most of the developers I talk to are loath to build multifamily product because the risk of lawsuit is pretty high. When you buy a house, you know it can be tough on your marriage. It says it's a major fixer-upper. How's your marriage? Single-family permits, they went up. And they went up really, quite frankly, in the city of Durango. The county was flat or even down a little bit, but the city of Durango here in the green, single-family residential permits went up. I don't know, went up from 75 to close to 190, something like that. But here's the real issue. Between 1992 and 2006, we were building north of 200, this is just a rural county. They were building north of 250 units a year. Here for the last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years, we've been very low out in rural La Plata County, so we're not adding supply and haven't been doing it for quite a while. In the city of Durango, the multifamily permits went up, and that included one 100-unit apartment complex. We're going to talk about that a little bit more, but if you take that one 100-unit complex out of the city numbers, they're not up so much. And that just goes to show what that density does for trying to meet that household growth, that demand in household growth.
Nobody wants to be involved in a lawsuit, but you'd like to know sort of what your risk level is. And in Colorado, in terms of the type of project, the projects that are most prone to any type of construction litigation claim are multifamily projects, primarily condominiums or large subdivisions created by a single developer. The next most likely project are high-end single-family homes, and the third most likely project would be a commercial project, an office building, a sewer treatment plant, or whatever. If you're buying, therefore, into a condominium or subdivision, it's very important to look at the CC&Rs, the covenants, conditions, and restrictions, or the declaration, and determine how any construction defect claim that might befall the common areas of that development or condominium are going to be managed. Are they all regulated simply by the board? Do the owners get involved and determine whether or not to hire a counsel? Is there a certain percentage of owners? Similarly, when you're purchasing a single-family home, you want to look at the purchase documents. Do they limit you to a specific type of claim? You might be routed only to arbitration versus litigation. You might have a certain time period to bring a claim. One of the first things everybody should understand is that in Colorado, no lawsuit or arbitration can be brought until the party bringing the claim, the owner of the property, first complies with something called the Construction Defect Action Reform Act, which the shorthand term is SDARA. Under SEDARA, before you bring a claim against any construction professional, any developer, any contractor, subcontractor, architect, or engineer, you must first send them written notice of the claim and list the defects and how you think your property has been damaged from that. Once they receive this notice, they then have 30 days to come out and inspect the property and see what their evaluation is. They then have another 30 days on residential projects or 45 days on commercial projects to offer a solution. The solution can be a monetary settlement, it can be work, it can be some combination of that. The owner who sent the claim then has 15 days to respond or to not respond. It's only at the end of that process that an action or an arbitration for construction defects can be brought against somebody. People who start to do repair work or try and file a lawsuit before that process get stopped and have to go back to start and go all over again. In terms of the nature of claims that we see most likely in construction defect law, I would say the single largest one are claims having to do with soils, either subsiding or swelling, and effects on foundations. Because of course when the foundation for a home or a condominium project or a sewer treatment plant starts to go, it affects everything above it. So foundation settlement, soils issues are probably the single biggest issue. The next one that I would rank is probably issues having to do with water penetration through roofs, through windows, through improper cladding. And then maybe the third are other types of structural concerns, such as not putting in correct load-bearing walls or not having the foundation built correctly, even though the soils are good. So those are things to, in particular when you're buying real estate, to look at. You know, are there any issues with the foundation? Are there any issues with the roof? Have there been any water penetration issues?
A construction defect law is a big deal, and thanks to Daniel Gregory for explaining it. So the city of Durango, the number of total residential units that we permitted was up here almost 200 in 2015. But again, my point is you take that 100-unit complex out of there, you're down to 100. So that has some impact. That 100-unit complex is a big deal, and we need a few more to start trying to meet that demand. Had someone say to me, Bob, we've never done 500 units in La Plata County. Well, that's not true. We have. Between 1993 and about 2007, almost 15 years, we were providing enough supply to meet the population growth, to meet household growth. But we stopped doing that in 2007, going into the Great Recession. We stopped building. And we really haven't recovered here for the last 6, 7, 8 years, just not building enough. Karen Iverson, who's the executive director of the Regional Housing Alliance here in La Plata County, did a demand forecast. And by the way, that's available on their website. You can read the whole document if you'd like. But she did some projections as to what we might need in terms of new dwelling units. And her low range was 1.6%. Well, that's 560 units. And someone said to me, well, that's too many. Well, if you looked at that 1993 through 2007 number, it's not. That's real. That's right. That's accurate. That's an accurate prediction of what we need. The numbers don't lie. Look at household. This number in the red, this is growth in the number of households. Remember way back when I started, demographics, what's important? Population growth, household growth, and the labor market. Well, here in the red, this is household growth as told by the state demographer's office. They tell you here's how many households are growing, here's the pace they're growing annually in La Plata County. In the blue, we got number of residential units permitted in La Plata County. So that household growth has been outpacing permit growth for the last 7 or 8 years. Supply is going down, demand is up. Demand has been very strong. We need to build more units. Same sort of relationship occurs in the rental market. Remember, we were building enough units up until about 2007. We're meeting that 500 unit demand that Karen came up with. And during 2003 to 2010, that vacancy rate in the apartment market hung out at 5.3%. 6% is a market imbalance. So that wasn't bad. That's vacancy rates here in the red. So it was okay. Well then 2011, 2015, go back and you can see we weren't building any units. Well, what happened in the apartment market? The vacancy rate plummeted down to 1%, and the rental rate skyrocketed from about, I don't know, 900 up to almost 11 or 1,200 bucks a month. Lack of supply, continued demand, prices go up. Econ 101.
Looking ahead, we see a strong demand for affordable rental units in Durango. We were so proud to partner on the Lumion apartment project this past year, which created 50 units that are renting for between $500 and $800 a month. These units leased up so quickly they were gone in 90 days. And we're going to be applying for state and federal funding for phase 2 this year and create 40 more units. It's the Regional Housing Alliance's goal to create 100 new affordable rental units by 2020.
What's the college impact on the rental market? You get a lot of numbers that get thrown about in terms of how does the college really impact the local rental market? Come on, those kids have got to have a huge impact on the local rental market. They have all those parties and they're parked on the streets, cause havoc down there. Well, the fact of the matter is they really don't. And I'm on this Housing Policy Advisory Committee, and the housing folks from the college came down and gave a presentation. And they started out with the number of students that are on campus, or the enrollment, excuse me. In the college right now, I don't know, it's something like 36, 37, 3,800 students. About 40% of those students live on campus. In fact, that 40% is pretty high when you look at the state, when you look at the institutions in the state of Colorado. That 40% is a pretty high number. Many of them are below that. So the college is doing their part. And if you deduct that 40%, and then a few other things that they deduct for instance, there are some kids that live with their parents or live out of town, or there actually are some that take courses online and aren't even in the state of Colorado. That number drops to about 1,300 to 1,900 students that live off campus and occupy some percentage of rental units in the city of Durango, okay? That's the fall of 2015. Well, let's just say 3, maybe, college students per rental unit. You know, hint, hint, it might be 4 or 5, might be a little bit bigger than that, which would only drive these numbers lower. But if it's 3, it's they occupy between 450 and 633 units in the city, which is it's only 15%. It's not that big a number. It's substantial, but it's not huge. This is the total number of rental units in the city based on the 2014 U.S. Census data. Commercial building went up quite a bit, responding to demand. Went up quite a bit, in particular out in the county. The city also saw an increase here in the green, and the county is in the purple. So those total building permits went up quite a bit. That was a strong commercial market.
Commercial real estate activity in La Plata County increased over 40% in 2015. Part of the reason for this is the re-entry of the individual investor in the local real estate commercial market. With the stock market so volatile and interest rates so low, investors are feeling much more comfortable with having their money invested locally in income-producing properties. This segment of the market has now become undersupplied as there are many more investors looking to purchase locally than there are properties available.
The commercial properties at Three Springs are really what I consider kind of the hidden gem. You know, really why Three Springs is even here is because of the hospital. You know, and so with the leverage that we were able to utilize through the related party businesses of the Southern Ute Tribe, we were able to put down about 80,000 square feet of commercial space initially in Three Springs. on top of what the hospital had put in. The existing commercial here at Three Springs, we're 96% leased up. We've got pads that are basically shovel ready for projects as small as 2,000 square feet up to probably 40 to 50,000 square feet of commercial. And like I said, that's really shovel ready. No access issues, no utility issues, all that's taken care of in the master plan of Three Springs.
As we all know, parking has a pretty big impact on commercial development in Durango. The parking regs are kind of tough, and we chew up a lot of land, a lot of surface area with parking. Hopefully we can change that in the future. So construction activity, as I said early on, it's been climbing since the Great Recession and continued to climb in 2015. Markets responding to demand. What's my summary? What do I expect? We're going to continue to see population growth. We're going to continue to see people who want to move here. Whether they join the labor force or not, they're going to continue to move. That residential housing unit supply at affordable levels, I think it's going to remain below demand. I think we're going to continue to see that inventory compression, particularly below $450,000, particularly below $450,000 inside the city of Durango. We've got a labor shortage problem. If you come to Durango, where are you going to live? We've got low oil and natural gas prices. We've got slow growth of income. Those are factors working against us. We've got an insufficient supply of housing for labor force, increased cost of housing, and that influx of non-working population. I don't know how big an impact this energy industry decline is going to have on us, but it's going to have an impact, and it's having an impact right now. Household growth, I think that might weaken a little bit because of the energy industry, so that demand may weaken a bit. I think we're already seeing that. Election year uncertainty, I know there's a lot of politicians that for political purposes want to tell us how bad everything is. I'm in Mr. Buffett's camp. I kind of think that's wrong. That's dead wrong. I think things in the country we got a low unemployment rate. We're doing okay. Yeah, wage growth hasn't been as good as it should have been, but we're doing okay. Tell that to the guys in the energy industry. They wouldn't like to hear that. I think we're going to continue to see tourism increase in 2016, primarily because those fuel prices are so low. They're very low. And we're a drive-to market, particularly in the summertime. I think they're going to come. And we may see a little decline, we may see a little hiccup, but I don't think it'll be big. Durango's still desirable. It's on all those top 10 lists. We still get recreation awards, and we're still getting them. All right, and it's going to continue. Again, that energy industry, I don't know how big it's going to be, but it's going to impact local royalty checks. It's going to impact the future county tax revenue. It's going to impact spending, and it's going to impact those energy-dependent feeder markets. I expect moderate transaction activity increase. I don't know how much. In fact, personally, I think it might flatline. We might not see too much growth in our transaction activity, and I think that's primarily because of that energy industry.
"16 years ago, we served on a committee to help formulate ideas for this annual event. I'll never forget Joe Bob McGuire piping up and saying, this is called a real estate forecast. He said, we need to stick out our neck and make some prognostications. To that end, he posed the following question, which we still use today. If you were given $100,000 in cash to invest in La Plata County real estate, where would you put it?
If I had $100,000 to invest in real estate, I would invest in town Durango. The demand for both rentals and single-family homes have been the strongest among our county, and I believe it will continue this way for Durango product.
I think Bayfield would be a logical choice for a project. If you could provide builders with developed lots under $50,000, I think they could create sellable inventory.
If I had $100,000 to invest right now, I would probably choose vacant land. It's the way I was raised. I was raised to put down my roots and be creative. And I think vacant land allows you to do that. So that's where I would put my $100,000.
If I was to have a $100,000 down payment to put down in any investment I could choose, I would hands down put down into the Three Springs area. It's growing. It's going to be a huge development in this area.
The city of Durango houses approximately 17,000 residents. Roughly 23% of those are college students. If I have $100,000 in 2016, I would invest in a condo or townhome in the city of Durango. Why not house our next generation of working class? Let their parents pay their rent in this fantastic college-friendly town.
Well, now you know the secret on what to do with your $100,000, and if you should have an extra $100,000, I feel fairly confident one of our brokers will be happy to help you. Hey, why don't you give a hand to Bob, John, and Jim for your 2016. My name's J.R. Spies. I am the sales manager for the Wells Group, and I just wanted to take a minute to share with you a little bit about some of our statistics. A lot of people ask questions after the fact that, well, you don't really tell much about the company. This is where we get the information from. What I'm going to show you on this slide, there's a lot here. And in fact, what I'd like to show you right now is in 2015 firm ranking, the Wells Group did 30% of the business. And one of the figures that's not up here is 83%. So you don't see that on this slide, but 83% is the amount of business that the top 5 real estate companies did through our Durango Area Association of Realtors. And as you can see, the Wells Group is, I'll go back. The Wells Group is number 1. And when you say, oh, 30%, 20%, 17%, you know, what's that mean? Well, if you'll see, we did $305 million in 2015, and that's almost $100 million more than our closest competitor. In fact, when you look at number of transactions at 924, that's double our third competitor, and they actually have more brokers than the Wells Group. So we're very efficient at what we do, and we're proud of it. We are locally owned and operated, and there's been a real interesting trend in the real estate industry. It's called the rise of the independents. And what you're seeing in major markets is that 40% of the number 1 company is an independent company. Much like the Wells Group, if you're from Southwest Colorado, you've heard of us. But if you're from some other area, you may not know that, well, the Wells Group is number 1. So we are partnered with an affiliation called the Leading Real Estate Companies of the World. And it's an invitation-only membership. But as you can see on some of these statistics, the top real estate companies did over 1 million transactions, $321 billion worth of business. There's over 500 companies, 3,500 offices, 120,000 sales associates in over 50 countries. And again, I know this is a little tough to see, but it basically just shows this is the amount of business Leading Real Estate Companies does compared to some of the other affiliates out there. We're proud to be part of that. Jim Watkins said at the beginning of the presentation that these are full-time real estate brokers. These are careers for these guys. This is what they do. They don't do other work. They're not part-time. They are committed to you. And quite frankly, you know, we appreciate the business that we do. We know where our business comes from. It comes from you. It comes from our business partners. It comes from our friends, our families, you know, people we've made relationships for years. And, you know, we want your business, and we value your business, and we're grateful. We're grateful to the fact that we're going to give back to our community. And you're going to recognize some of the companies, the schools, the nonprofits. And in 2015, we gave over $70,000 to a number of these organizations. And this was the Wells Group, and it doesn't count the individual donations that our brokers do. Finally, you know, I just really wanted to thank you. I want to thank you for coming. I want to thank you for trusting us, because you've done that for years, and that's what's made us number 1. We do have some special people I want to recognize. As Jim said earlier, On our forecast committee, Andy, Alicia, Chelsea, Chris, Devin, Hannah, Joe Bob, Lauren, Melissa, Rick, Zane, and Sherry. They all helped put this together. Preston Benson, he's filming this. You can see the full presentation on our website. Sam Rose, Nathan, Alex with Web Services. Obviously, Bob used a lot of statistics, John as well, from our local businesses, city, county, state, government employees who annually help make this presentation possible. We couldn't do it without them. But really and truly, who I want to recognize, and I know we did this earlier, but are the brokers, because they are the Wells Group. They really care. They're concerned. They really want to do the best job possible. I was in the mortgage business for 15 years. I got recruited over here about a year and a half. I have a new respect and a new appreciation for the job of a realtor, and it's not easy. Guys, please stand up for me, would you? Please stand up. Give them a hand. I'm telling you, they work really, really, really hard. They work really hard for you. And finally, to our sponsors, as mentioned earlier, but First National Bank, Alpine Bank, Title Durango, the Malone team, Caliber Home Loans, America Ag Credit, Wells Fargo Home Mortgage, Bank of Colorado. Without your help, we really could not put this on. I hope you guys have a great night. Thank you so much for your time this evening. Have a great time.